Good morning, cooperative education students. This is Katie Birch, your cooperative education teacher. Before I start, I realize we have the wrong title for our class today. Today, we are moving on to topic 8, which is the labor market. So if you have never heard that term before, hopefully by the end of today, you will know exactly what it means. Remember, the way to reach out to me is to email me at kbirch@nnec.on.ca or text me on the number below and send me a message if you're having any trouble getting in the course whatsoever. All right. Reminder, classes are Monday to Thursday, 9 a.m., and all recordings are available in Google Classroom. So if you miss a class, not to worry. All that information can be found in Google Classroom. All right, so class code for Google Classroom is listed on this slide. You should already be in Google Classroom and active. If you're not active, we'll probably move you to the second half of this term because it's too late to get going now. All right, what are we talking about today? We're talking about employment trends. Does employment and jobs, do they always stay the same? What are some things to look for when and why? Why bother even looking at employment trends? How does that impact you as a worker? And we're going to look at the labor market. So we're going to start with a 10-minute video about what is the labor market. And instead of listening to me talk about it, there's a really great video I'd like to show you that tells you all about the labor market and some things to think about. So let's log in for the first 10 minutes here.
Welcome to Crash Course Economics. I'm Adrienne Hill.
And I'm Jacob Clifford. And today we're going to talk about labor markets, a pretty important topic.
Unless you're independently wealthy or fine with living in your parents' basement, you probably need to get a job. But how do you even get a job? And what kind of job should you get? In a lot of ways, it comes down to supplying a skill that someone else demands. This is Cristiano Ronaldo. He makes about $20 million a year playing soccer or football, depending on where you live. Pretty much everybody would agree no one needs that kind of money. But does he deserve it? How do his employers, the Real Madrid Football Club, justify his huge salary? Admittedly, the market for professional athletes is complex, but on some level, it's supply and demand. The supply of people that have the skills to be world-class soccer players is low, and the demand for world-class soccer players is incredibly high. Ronaldo might be willing to play for only $10 million a year. It's a lot of money. He might even play for $5 million. And if he really, truly loved the beautiful game, he might do it for free. So why is he getting $20 million? This goes back to that really high demand. Having a superstar on your team generates millions in tickets and merchandise sales. It might help you win some of the many cups up for grabs in international football. So Real Madrid thought Ronaldo and his double scissor move were worth $20 million. And Ronaldo agreed. So they have a contract. These same ideas explain how wages are determined in nearly every labor market. Let's go to the thought bubble.
Usually when Stan goes to the mall, he's the buyer. He demands sunglasses and giant pretzels, and the businesses supply them. But if he wants a job at the mall's pretzel shop, the roles are reversed. Since he supplies labor, he's now the seller, and the pretzel shop owner becomes the buyer, a buyer of labor. Now, that's when wage negotiation ensues. Stan could insist on a wage of $25 an hour for his pretzel skills, but the owner will point out that they can easily hire other people for much less. The owner could offer Stan a wage of only $1 per hour, but Stan would point out that he could easily get paid more at the froyo shop. In the end, they agree on a wage that makes each of them better off. The owner gets some help around the store, and Stan earns money so he can buy even cooler sunglasses. Economists call this voluntary exchange. The supply of labor depends on the number of people that are qualified to do the job. So Stan would love to get paid more, but since warming up pretzels doesn't require extensive skills, the supply of capable workers is high, and consequently, the wage is relatively low. But that doesn't mean Stan's going to work for peanuts. The wage offered has to cover his opportunity cost, the value of his lost free time, and the money he could be making doing something else. The demand for labor depends on the demand for the products a business sells. Economists call this derived demand. If pretzel demand is booming, then store owners are going to want more pretzel makers. If other stores also need more employees, demand for workers will increase and drive up wages. Thanks, Thought Bubble. Supply and demand explain why wages are different for different professions. Engineers are in high demand because they produce the products that many consumers want, and their supply is limited because the training for these jobs is pretty difficult. Social workers and historians aren't paid as much, even though their work is important, because demand is relatively low and supply is relatively high. It's not rocket science.
Supply and demand explain a lot, but there are several reasons why wages in a labor market don't end up at a competitive equilibrium. Sometimes workers get paid less not because they have different skill levels, but because of their race, ethnic origin, sex, age, or other characteristics. This is called wage discrimination. Wages might also be unfairly low when a labor market is a monopsony, when there's only one company hiring and workers are relatively immobile. When you're the only employer, workers have to take what you offer or they're out of luck. Take the NCAA, the organization that regulates college athletics in the US. Many economists point out that high-profile college athletes are generating millions of dollars for their schools, but they're forced to accept a very low wage of a scholarship with free tuition. Now, sure, baseball and hockey players can skip straight to the pros, but the NFL prohibits drafting football players until 3 years after high school, and NBA teams can't draft basketball players until they're 19. There are some situations where wages might actually be higher than market equilibrium. For example, some employers might voluntarily offer higher than normal wages to increase worker productivity and retention. Economists call this efficiency wages. Henry Ford doubled the wages of assembly line workers in 1914 to keep them from seeking jobs elsewhere, and this still goes on today. You may not be completely happy with your job, but if it offers way more than what everyone else is paying, you're less likely to quit. Unions can also drive up wages. A union is an organization that advances the collective interests of employees and strives to improve working conditions and increase wages. They do this through collective bargaining. Representatives for the workers negotiate with employers, and if their demands aren't met, workers go on strike and stop production altogether. Although unions were once very strong in the US, union membership and their strength has declined since the 1950s. At their height, approximately 1 in 3 American workers were in a labor union. These days, it's more like 1 in 9. And the largest unions represent workers in the public sector, like teachers and firefighters. Wages might also not be at equilibrium when there's a minimum wage, basically a price floor that prevents employers from paying workers below a specific amount. Technically, in the US, minimum wage affects less than 3% of workers. But the Brookings Institution estimates that an increase in the minimum wage likely wouldn't just impact that small slice of the labor market. It would also drive up the wages of people who make just above the minimum wage. According to Brookings, that ripple effect could raise the wages of nearly 30% of the workforce. The debate over whether or not there should be a minimum wage and how high that minimum wage should be gets pretty heated pretty fast. Some classical economists argue against nearly all forms of government manipulation in competitive markets. They say the minimum wage not only leads to unemployment, but it actually hurts the people it claims to help. Their logic goes something like this. A minimum wage deters employers from hiring unskilled workers, hiring only skilled or semi-skilled workers instead. These economists argue that the minimum wage does little or nothing to alleviate poverty, since instead of earning a minimum wage, unskilled workers end up earning no wage at all. The economists that support a minimum wage argue that real-life labor markets aren't as competitive or transparent as classical economists suggest. They believe that employers have the upper hand when it comes to negotiating wages, and that individual workers lack bargaining power. I'm not going to tell you what to think, but think about it like this. If a grocery store wasn't required to pay $7.25 an hour, and the grocery store was the only place hiring, they could likely squeeze individual employees to accepting lower than market value. In this interpretation, minimum wage isn't interfering with competitive markets as much as it's correcting a market failure. Remember antitrust laws that prevent powerful monopolies from charging higher prices? Economists that support minimum wage laws say they prevent employers from using their power to exploit workers. The economists who are entirely opposed to minimum wage laws are losing the policy battle. Most countries around the world have minimum wage laws, and many of those countries without them have de facto minimum wages set by collective bargaining agreements. But even among economists who support some sort of minimum wage, there's disagreement over how high that minimum wage should be and what raising the minimum wage might do to the economy. Consider the US. The current federal minimum wage is $7.25 an hour. In 2014, 600 economists, including 7 Nobel Prize winners, signed a letter arguing that the minimum wage should be increased to $10.10 an hour. They argued that raising the minimum wage could have a small benefit to the economy. Workers, with their newly increased wages, would spend more. This would increase demand and perhaps help stimulate employment. But some of those same economists balked when it came to the question of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. They argue that even if a $15 an hour minimum wage might make sense in an expensive city like Los Angeles or New York, where the median income is relatively high, it could have a significant negative effect on employment in a city or town where incomes are lower. If economics was a pure science, we could just test these ideas under controlled circumstances. We could have one state set a significantly higher minimum wage than its neighbor and see what happens. It turns out that happened in 1992, and economists David Card and Alan Kruger studied it. New Jersey raised its minimum wage from $4.25 to $5.05, while Pennsylvania kept theirs at $4.25. The economists surveyed large fast food chains along the state's shared border and found that workers didn't get fired. In fact, employment in New Jersey actually increased, but it's far from settled. There have also been studies that indicate raising the minimum wage does increase unemployment. A relatively recent survey of economists by the University of Chicago found that a small majority think raising the minimum wage to $9 an hour would make it noticeably harder for poor people to get work. But, and this is where it gets interesting, a slim majority also thought the increase would be worthwhile because the benefits to people who could find jobs at $9 an hour would outweigh the negative effect on overall employment.
Very few economists argue that a higher minimum wage will end poverty, but some argue that it could reduce poverty. The minimum wage doesn't exist in a vacuum. Policies that fight poverty should also focus on providing education and skills.
Those skills are what the labor market values. It's those skills that are in short supply and high demand and will command higher wages. So while you're waiting for economists to figure all this out, you might want to learn a new skill, practice your double scissor, and maybe take Ronaldo's job.
Thanks for watching Crash Course Economics. You can help keep...
Okay, so, I mean, really what we get from that video is labor markets are really about wage. Really, it really, labor market is about money. Money in, money out, okay? So let's go take a look at Google Classroom, and we're going to go to Topic 8, Employment Trends. And we're going to start taking a look at the work there. So at your placement, you have generally, if you were doing a co-op placement with an unpaid job, it gives you the opportunity to see what people do in their jobs every day. But the jobs that exist at your co-op placement might actually look really different in the future. So while you've been in WASA doing your work placement, things continue to develop and change. So whatever you do, whether you choose to stay in your chosen path or move to another career, it's important to understand how the future might unfold, okay? So that's why it's actually a business of forecasting labor trends. It's not a science. It's about making good inferences, which means guesses, based on what has happened and what will happen. And those are called trends, which is the general direction in which something like the popularity of certain fashions appears to move over time, okay? Forecasters consider several things. One of those things being demographics. Demographics are the characteristics of a population, which includes lifestyles, habits, spending, age, social, employment, and things like that. So population demographics are one big one. What's the age of the population? What do people need? What are they going to spend their money on? And this has been a really good example during COVID. Because no one is traveling, things like boats and hot tubs and things that people can do, camping equipment, all that kind of stuff is selling through the roof because no one is traveling outside of their home communities. So they're staying home and doing things that are local to home, like hunting, fishing, all that stuff. Something else to do with labor trend is changes in patterns of spending, which is what I just talked about, how they spend their money, right? Different during COVID times, that's for sure. The next one is changes in how and where goods and services are produced, distributed, and sold. So, 50 years ago, things weren't as accessible overseas. Now, people are getting things in from China, not locally in Canada. So that definitely makes a difference in the labor trends. Also, shifts in which workers are due to retire that will need replacing. So this is when right now we're going through this a little bit where the baby boomers, and that was a generation of people that had children all at once right after the war. A lot of those people are retiring now. So there's actually a big need for retirement homes, okay? And this is another big one that is impacting us all the time is the new technological discoveries that change the way that work is done. Okay, so it's not like it's a crystal ball and they can't predict necessarily everything, but when they put the whole picture together, that's what the labor market could look like and how you could fit in it. Okay, so the labor market are all people who are available to work. It's important to know about the labor market because it helps you decide which jobs and opportunities are available at which times. And being aware of becoming a ongoing learner is really important, especially nowadays. So in Ontario, the following occupations will continue to need workers while you pursue your placement and your immediate future. So management, hotel, skilled trades, retail, transportation, administration, okay? So all of these things stay pretty stable, but you need to understand the trends. So some Canadian industries need more labor because of changes in the economy. Okay, and that's what we're dealing with now, with COVID, people being laid off, having to upskill. There's a lot of funding going into allowing people to learn a new skill. In Canada, 3/4 of all the jobs are in service producing industries. So that would be like fast food restaurants, working in factories, retail, healthcare, and social assistance. Something to consider too that I mentioned earlier is that technological innovations also help spur job creation. Okay. Since the dawn of the information age, people and businesses have become accustomed to getting information quickly. For this very reason, jobs are based on technological know-how or on getting and sharing new knowledge, which is often technological knowledge, and it will continue to grow. These jobs are part of the new knowledge industry. Okay, so information age is a period that began in the late 20th century where information was very easily accessible. Now, knowledge industry is an industry where workers obtain, use, and manage knowledge in a particular way. So we're just going to take a minute, take another break, watch another video about how the labor markets change, and then we're going to talk about trends, and then we will move into our assignment for the day. All right.
There is something going on in the world of work today. Some kind of a evolution that's forcing organizations to think differently about what it means to be an employee or a manager, and even what it means to actually work. There are 5 trends that are causing this evolution to happen. 5 trends that are forcing organizations to challenge everything they know about work. These 5 trends are globalization, mobility, millennials and changing demographics, new behaviors, and technology. Globalization is causing the world to become like one giant city. The language that you speak, the culture that you subscribe to, the currency that you transact in, and where you are physically located are all starting to matter much less. This means that organizations can tap into talent anywhere in the world. Mobility is allowing us to stay connected to people and information anytime, anywhere, and on any device. This means that work is no longer a place you go to, it's something that you carry with you in your pocket wherever you are. Millennials are expected to comprise 50% of the workforce by 2020 and 75% of the workforce by 2025. Millennials are digital natives that expect and want to work in ways that reflect the year we live in. Most people live in 2015, but work at companies that operate like they are in 1975. Although millennials are driving enormous organizational change, it's important to remember that the future employee is anyone that is changing their behavior and mindset to adapt to the changing workforce. This means it doesn't matter if that person is 22 or 62. New behaviors are rapidly entering our organizations. For example, we are all comfortable living a more public life. We share our thoughts in blogs, post reviews on Yelp, have our entire professional history on LinkedIn, share pictures on Instagram, rant on Twitter, and engage in open conversations on Facebook. In fact, virtually every aspect of business behavior has changed, including the way we share, communicate, collaborate, teach, learn, find information, access technology, and create content. This is forcing organizations to fundamentally rethink and reimagine the way we work. Technologies such as big data, wearable devices, collaboration platforms, the Internet of Things, and cloud computing are enabling us to work in new ways while keeping us more engaged and productive. In the future of work, technology is the central nervous system of the organization that enables everything else to function. Together, these 5 trends, combined with an unprecedented war for talent, is forcing organizations to shift their mentality from creating a place where they assume employees need to work there to creating an environment where employees want to work there. When we think about the future of work, the organizations that can most effectively make this shift from need to want are the ones who will be able to attract and retain top talent. This means that if your organization doesn't think about and plan for the future of work, then your organization will have no future.
All right, so that was just a really neat video that talked about how the different trends is really shaping that work and how it's changing things over time. Okay, so we just talked about the types of trends to watch and consider watching the following things. Today's students are preparing for jobs that don't even exist yet. That's something really interesting. Today's learner will on average have 10 jobs and 3 careers over a lifetime. So it used to be that when you were 20, you would start a job and you would retire at 60 and you wouldn't change careers at all. Now, most people, on average, have 10 jobs and 3 careers in their lifetime. Also, 3 in 4 workers between the ages of 16 and 19 have been with their employer for under a year. Interesting. 2 in 4 workers between 20 and 24 have been with their current employer for under a year. And also, something that probably you can relate to very well if you're a millennial is newspaper circulation declined by 7 million over the last 25 years. People are not accessing their news through newspapers anymore. Their online news readership has increased by 30 million over the past 5 years. And just so you know, Google handles 1 billion search inquiries per day. That's pretty crazy. More video was uploaded to YouTube in the last 2 months than if ABC, NBC, and CBS had been airing new content 24/7, 365 days a year since 1948. Wow, that's super interesting. So as you can see, changes in how you live and work are taking place rapidly. As a result, it's important to understand and prepare for the jobs of the future, not just what you see today. And that's why being a continuous learner, which means having the ability to keep learning throughout your life, is super important. Whether you're upgrading your knowledge or developing new skills, knowing that you're probably going to have 10 jobs, 3 careers in your future, it's really important to have the essential skill of being a continuous learner. All right. How do you prepare for jobs of the future when you don't know what they are? Like I said, keep learning for the rest of your life. Be prepared, upgrade your skills through formal education or training, certifications. Whether you're in school or doing professional learning on the job, it doesn't mean you need to obtain as much post-secondary schooling as possible. It means once you're working, the learning doesn't stop. Okay. Second, develop technical skills. The ability to use tools and understand technical applications will always be important for your future. Okay? Usually this means understanding and applying math concepts. So make sure you have a good foundation. Try to start thinking of your electronic devices as tools and not just toys. The more you can effectively adapt technology and software, the easier it will be for you to adjust working in this current world we live in. Okay, this is really important. Learn to really communicate. Can you effectively express yourself with words, with your voice, in different languages, with pictures and graphics? The ability to share your ideas and convincingly will be a tremendous asset. Okay? As global barriers are reduced in a process known as globalization, employees will have to communicate with customers using different languages, practices, beliefs, benefits. Okay? So globalization is just when you have more connections between people in different nations, cultures, and businesses around the world. Being flexible. In your future job, you'll likely need to be very flexible. While you need to be prepared for the realities of the workplace, you'll probably find a job that fits your routine and lifestyle. Many companies have introduced flex time, which means you choose the hours of your work, okay? Or job sharing. So standard 9 to 5 is not the case anymore. Okay, growing your personal and professional networks. This is probably the best advice I will give you as an employee. Don't burn your bridges, okay? Because you never know when you will cross paths with that person again. So it's a great time right now to demonstrate your work ethic and ability to get things done and to get people in your corner. Grow your network and don't burn bridges, okay? Another one is explore what's in the news. There's a world out there beyond sporting events and gossip. Read the news on a regular basis, and it will give you an idea of what's happening in the world around you. When you understand the impact of trends in the workplace today and in the future, you can shape your studies and what you want to do in the future based on those trends and secure yourself a really great job. Okay, so assignments for today. Your tasks are to do 8-1, labor trends terminology, and 8-2, the case studies. Everything else is you don't need to do, but those are your 2 assignments for this for today's lesson. How are we doing for time? Let's go take a look at those assignments together. So the first assignment is, let me just go ahead and post today's work for you. Perfect. Okay, today's assignment is taking a look at the labor trend terminology. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to, if you don't know what these mean, Google is your friend. But either way, all the answers are actually in this document. So what does transferable skill mean to you? And then you're going to choose which one of these which one of these is the definition of transferable skills? Is it employees choosing their own time? Tools and equipment designed to solve problems? General direction something's going in? Is it job sharing? An industry in which workers obtain, use, and manage knowledge in a particular way? So I would say transferable skills would be there we go. Skills you can take with you from one situation, job to another. And you're going to put the answer right into the LM8-1. And your task, we did talk about a lot of these topics when we were watching those videos, but if you're not sure, you can actually use, if you copy the word and you go to tools and go to explore, you can actually search for those words and their definitions right here in the same document. All right, so that's your one assignment. Second assignment is you're going to go through these labor trend case studies, okay? And you're going to read the case study. So scenario 1, demographics will play a large role in future employment trends. As a large portion of the population reaches a retirement age, golf courses are becoming busier. So the impact. So identify the impact of the following trends may have on the job market. So if golf courses are becoming busier and busier, golf courses will need more people. Okay, so Also, the impact is there will be more retirement because people are retiring, more retirement homes needed. Okay, so you're just going to make a list of the impact of these trends that are listed, and there's 5 scenarios there. Okay, so you're going to say, how does this trend impact the job market? Okay, tell me what your ideas are. Okay, and when you're done, you're going to submit that for marking as well. So we're almost, I know these recordings seem really short, but you do have quite a bit of work to do during class time, and I would really like to give you class time to do it. And know that I'm always available at 9 o'clock till 10 o'clock. So if you need help while you're working on these, don't be shy and reach out for help. Or send me an email and I'll make sure I'm available to get online and help you at a time that suits you. So those are your 2 tasks for this class today. We're exploring labor trends and the job market. And then tomorrow we're moving on to gender in the workplace. And then Wednesday is managing difficult situations at work. And then Thursday, we're going to start working on a cooperative education plan. And then you're going to start collecting those work hours. So that's it for today. Looking forward to seeing your assignments as always, and I will see you on Tuesday.